History Test, Part 3. Short answer question answered. Throughout history, there have been a number of impactful people who have changed the world, and their impact was drawn from what impacted them. Thomas Hobbes lived throughout a dark period in English history, the English Civil War. This was a time of chaos, and England was ruled under tyranny. Due to the society in which he was raised, he came to believe that man was egocentric and driven by guts, groins, and glory. Hobbes believed man was in constant competition with each other and that humanity would not survive under constitutional monarchy. Hobbes's ideal government was an absolute rule where one supreme ruler controlled every aspect of society. In contrast, a man named John Locke's ideal government was a limited monarchy or republic. Locke, too, was influenced by where he was raised, living during the prime of the Glorious Revolution. The Glorious Revolution was a time of peace and restoration. Due to these influences, Locke believed that man aspired to greatness, and that a bilateral agreement between the king and his people would serve the best choice to ensure the success of their country. The state of nature of these men were influenced by the forces in motion at their prime, and any other way of life was foreign to these men who only knew good or bad. Years after these two political philosophers, one man was working to change the government forever. Montesquieu, also known as the father of political science, was combining scientific methods to political thought. Montesquieu created a concept that existed as a separation of powers. The government would be divided into 3 different branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. Each branch would have a check on the other, to ensure that no one body would have full power. Montesquieu's system of checks and balances not only changed the way the government would be run, but was the key to avoiding a tyrannical rule. Essay question answered. Causes of the French Revolution. Up until the late 1700s, France was ruled under what was known as the Ancien regime. The Ancien regime was the old way of France, which consisted of an absolute monarchy. The rule of kings under the Ancien regime had been going strong for hundreds of years, yet France was stuck in many problems. Under the Ancien regime, the society of France was divided into 3 estates. The first estate was known as the clergy. The clergy were exempt from all taxes, yet could collect them as the members of the upper clergy. The members of the upper clergy found their duty lay with the king rather than citizens most in need of their help. The clergy consisted of an upper clergy, such as the bishops, and the lower clergy, which consisted of the parish priests. The lower clergy would find themselves allying with the revolutionists, whom they had more in common with. The second estate were the nobles, whom were exempt from the highest taxes and had rights the peasants could only dream of. The nobles, too, were divided into 2 groups: the nobility of the sword, the nobles who were of noble blood or had earned their title through action, and the nobility of the robe, the nobles who bought their title. The final estate is known as the third estate, which made up 95% of France's population, and would be the estate who would benefit most from the revolution. The third estate consisted of the peasants who suffered through heavy taxes they couldn't afford to pay, as well as the bourgeoisie, the middle-class, educated people, who would be the most influential throughout the revolution. The causes of the revolution can be split up into 5 distinct causes, the first of which being the parlements. The parlements were a form of superior law courts that were dominated and run by the nobles. The parlements gave the nobles the right to refuse to register the royal laws put in place by the king. Thus from the parlements came a constant power struggle between the nobles and the king, who had deprived them of the political power they were struggling to regain. The bourgeoisie, too, were jealous of the power the nobles had, and were trying to earn some of that power for themselves. From the parlements soon would come a collision between the nobles, who wanted to regain power, and the ambitious bourgeoisie. While King Louis XVI had attempted to reduce the power of the nobles, he himself was a failure to his people. Both he and his predecessor, Louis XV, had failed to see the struggle their people were going through, nor did they notice the impending threat from the bourgeoisie, until it was too late. Every reform they tried to make to taxation was resisted by the nobles, whom the king feared was the real threat to the throne. Louis XVI was oblivious to the changing roles of the monarchy, but was too weak to do any good for his country while they were facing their most perilous time. While the idea of the enlightened despotism came from France, both monarchs failed to be enlightened. However, while the monarchs of France failed to accept the ideas of a lying despotism, their people did not. The writings of the philosophes served to inspire the bourgeoisie to believe that they had a historic mission. The bourgeoisie wanted to create a new and enlightened society. They were convinced they were not only fighting for class interests, but for the rights and justice for all humanity. While the Enlightenment did not cause the revolution, it served to inspire the people that they deserved more. During the American Revolution, the French government, despite being deep in debt, continued giving the Americans money and men to help them succeed. When it was over, French soldiers came back from America with new ideas and democratic beliefs, stirring up excitement within the Third Estate. The French people believed that if the Americans had the right to revolution, then they had even more reason to rebel against their own failure of a king. The American Revolution served not only as proof that the French people could rebel, but the American people took French ideas and beliefs and used them to inspire the French people, gave these ideas back to the French. The final cause of the French Revolution would be the financial crisis they faced. For the country as glorious and rich as France, it would prove ironic that the French government was in a giant debt. The number of wars the French people had faced had significantly drained them of their resources, and while the American Revolution seemed to inspire them, it did nothing to help, but rather worsen their financial state. The tax system was draining the life of the peasants, who were already struggling with the lack of land available, which led to much employment. Stuck in a place where the nobles would not allow any tax reforms, the government was borrowing money to survive. However, no matter how they tried, it came too late for the citizens who moved to the cities because of the industry problems, to the citizens who were starving and dying every day.